One of our viewers asked about plenary indulgences, and they noted that for many plenary indulgences, you read about the usual conditions that are prescribed to gain that plenary indulgence, and one of them is prayers for the intentions of the sovereign pontiff. What exactly does that mean?
Well, a lot of Catholics don't realize this, but the intentions of the sovereign pontiff are largely determined already in advance by the Church, independent of any particular pope. There are intentions that are ascribed to every true pope that are necessary because they're Catholics, right? And they're things that every Catholic has to desire and pray for. They're often listed as 6, and some commentaries of the Code of Canon Law actually list them entirely. Those who attend the traditional Mass and pray the prayers after Low Mass are already familiar with 2 of them: the conversion of sinners and the freedom and exaltation of our Holy Mother, the Church. Those are officially 2 prayers, 2 intentions of every sovereign pontiff who is a genuine sovereign pontiff. And so we find them listed as these 6, generally. The exaltation of the Catholic Church, because the Lord founded and constituted it as a sign and instrument of salvation, as the sign and instrument of salvation for the world. So the exaltation of the Catholic Church. Secondly, the extirpation of heresy. Okay? Again, it all comes down to because this is the will of Christ. So it has to be the will of the Church, and it has to be the will of every true pope. The extirpation of heresy. Thirdly, the propagation of the faith. Again, our Lord has expressed this desire of his when he sent forth his apostles and commanded them to preach the gospel to all nations. Fourthly, the conversion of sinners. That is the purpose of our Lord's reparatory death upon the cross, his desire to justify us from sin so that he can sanctify us by grace and finally glorify us in heaven with supernatural life of the beatific vision, what our Lord promised as everlasting life. Again, these are the purposes of Christ himself. So the propagation of the faith, the conversion of sinners. Fifthly, true concord between nations, the Christian nations in particular. Concord among the Christian princes and Christian Catholic rulers, okay? And again, how often did our Lord pray for that at the Last Supper, right? That unity that the faith would give, unity in charity. Again, this is the will of Christ, true concord among Christian nations, especially, and Christian leaders. And sixthly, the further welfare of the Christian people, that they may flourish and prosper. This is the 6th intention. Now, are they sometimes translated using different language? Yes, sometimes. But the general idea is certainly there. And these are standard intentions of every true pontiff. So when you have the prospect of gaining a plenary indulgence, which requires the usual conditions and praying for the intentions of the sovereign pontiff, this is what you're praying for. You're praying basically for these 6 things as determined by the Church itself, as determined by Christ himself. So people who see what Francis says, they cannot think that this is what I'm praying for, but I can't pray for that because it's something that the Church has always told us to pray against, something immoral, ecumenism and so forth. No, you're praying for these intentions that the Church has given us.
Mm-hmm. It makes perfect sense that those intentions would be kind of predetermined, so to speak, because if they were, tied to the actual reigning pontiff of the time, there was a period of sede vacante. If that pontiff died, the possibility of a plenary indulgence wouldn't just cease to exist. So it makes sense that there would be
during that interregnum. Yeah, that's true.